I would say for probably the past month plus, I've been utterly hyperfixated on strawberry production. I have done quite a deep dive. I did attend every single seminar on strawberries at Indoor Ag, and I absolutely learned. I took detailed notes, and then I've kind of consolidated my notes and really trying to understand how we can just transition an outdoor to an indoor. And I do believe it's happening. People are doing it. And I think, the tomato space has been obviously very populated for some time. Lettuce is another great indoor crop, but it's also very well staffed. So I think for me right now, my focus is strawberry production and understanding how to bring it indoors, specifically, CEA, control environmental agriculture, is very near and dear to me.
So, Andrew Volpetti, Business Development Director for North America at Red Horticulture. Thank you so much for joining me on the Vertical Farming Podcast.
Thank you very much, sir. It's absolutely awesome to be here on the computer, and it was great seeing you less than a week ago at Indoor AgCon, which was an absolute success, I would say, this year. And once again, reinvigorated, I think, every attendee, myself
Yeah,
included.
I think what's interesting in seeing some of the follow-ups of people posting on LinkedIn afterwards, the tone was a bit more subdued and maybe somber, but everybody was appreciating it and loving it. So a lot of the hype was gone, a lot of the inflated claims, more of the reality of what's happening in the vertical farming space in terms of the focus on farming and not technology.
Yes, and I think that was the big takeaway. I mean, I think they let the cat out of the bag. It's a secret. It's farming, not tech, and I couldn't agree more with that sentiment. Having the privilege of being a gardener, farmer, food producer, crop caretaker, that's what got us here. That's why we all do this. It's for the plants, not necessarily the tech, but
Yeah.
we need the tech to grow the plants. It's a heck of a catch-22.
I think it was an important prioritization on the farming as it should be with the tech supporting what's happening in either in the greenhouses or in the vertical farms. And I think a lot of the hype bubble, which did pop, and everyone using that trough of disillusionment graph ad nauseum, I think it was good to see. And I think everyone is appreciated more. So I think, you
And I
know,
think it lets us get back to what we're all really good at, which is growing plants and
yeah,
focusing on delivering products to the market that we're proud of,
yeah,
which
absolutely.
is why I got into this.
Yeah. And we want to give a shout out to Glenn Berman, who made the introduction.
Glenn,
Yeah, he's a good guy. We had him on the show previously, and he's a good connector as well.
absolutely the best.
How did you connect with Glenn?
So I've had the privilege of knowing Glenn for 4 to 5 years now.
Okay.
And I do feel like he really took me under his wing. I think having the ability to work closely with him in my previous career, I was at a distribution company, Hydrofarm, where I spent 15 and a half wonderful years. Glenn kind of got rolled into that fold with Growtainer, and I was already doing quite a bit with container farming, container growers, working with some of the other larger people that were in the space, and some of the others that are still in the space and getting to do it. Glenn and I have a lot of strong similarities in work ethic, in the ability to look at a problem and possibly find a solution that not everybody else saw. And I'm not always saying we have the same solution, but we both were willing to get outside of the box and look to what we could put in that box and make people successful, because that's what we both care about, is the success of our clients, because that's how we really measure ourselves.
Very well put. So let's rewind the clock back a little bit. What was your first foray into CEA?
Okay, that's a rewind. So I would say my first real agricultural experience, I had been working at a landscaping company. I think a lot of us start our stories that way. And they kind of noticed I had a knack for more along the lines of landscape architecture. And at the time, at the end of high school, going into college, I thought that was pretty cool.
Hmm.
I also was not the strongest science student. So I kind of knew that that wasn't going to be my path, but I knew I had a passion for plants. I made it all the way through undergrad with taking every science class I could regarding plant physiology, everything except for the chemistry classes. I was never a chemistry whiz, but all of the bios and all of that, and thoroughly enjoyed it. I did technically grow up a country boy. We had very large outdoor food production at my parents' house. My mom was an avid gardener, a very early, well, early, I mean, the rhododendron clubs. She had always been in a rhododendron society. So we'd always have the roadies come by, at least once a year to inspect the rhododendron. The property I grew up on had rhododendrons that dated back to the early 1900s.
Wow.
Obviously, my mom did not plant those, but she was and still is a steward of those plants. I've had the privilege of working, as I said, at Hydrofarm for 15 plus years. I have worked with a multitude of crops, whether it was leafies, lettuces, micros, medical plants, food production. I've been very fortunate. I have a strong backbone on understanding of horticulture. Where I find myself today is a little bit new, maybe for all of us in CEA. I've developed, I think I have a superpower. I'm ADHD and dyslexic, but one of the positives of ADHD, or at least I find it as a positive, is hyperfixation. And I would say for probably the past month plus, I have been utterly hyperfixated on strawberry production. I have done quite a deep dive. I did attend every single seminar on strawberries at Indoor Ag, and I absolutely learned. I took detailed notes, and then I've kind of consolidated my notes and really trying to understand how we can just transition an outdoor to an indoor. And I do believe it's happening. People are doing it. And I think, the tomato space has been obviously very populated for some time. Lettuce is another great indoor crop, but it's also very well staffed. So I think for me right now, my focus is strawberry production and understanding how to bring it indoors, specifically, CEA, control environmental agriculture, is very near and dear to me.
Yeah.
You're replicating sunlight, and I work for a lighting company, so I feel like I'm in a great seat right now.
We'll definitely get into that. Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Wilkes-Barre, Scranton, Pennsylvania, so if you
Okay.
ever seen The Office,
Oh, yeah.
it's a lot like that.
Yeah. And it sounds like there was some that early connection to plants and to food and farming. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Certainly. Well, one of the interesting things about Wilkes-Barre, Scranton is we're on the Susquehanna River, which is directly connected into the Chesapeake Bay. And I have been a lifetime member of the Chesapeake Watershed Association, Ducks Unlimited, avid outdoors person, but, really being a steward of the earth, where the town I came from, it's a mining town. It was what built this community. My grandfather was a miner. I'm a proud coal cracker. And that being said, a lot of the mining has adversely affected ecosystems. At one point, oysters were almost completely extinct in the Chesapeake Bay. Thankfully, they're back now.
Mm,
Thankfully, we've stabilized that ecosystem. But being cognizant of the watershed lands and things of that nature is what really kind of pulled me into agriculture and horticulture. You need the plants, or you're going to erode the soil, you're going to pollute the
yeah.
river, and it's all downstream from there.
I think that's a lot of things that people hopefully are becoming more aware of, and it feels like it's taken. I mean, I'm thinking about Rachel Carson's book Silent Spring, right? That's going back to what 60s or 70s, and
Yeah.
that was like the warning of what's happening, and it probably got worse after that,
Another
not
one right
better.
around there is Who Killed Cock Robin, which was the DDT, which
Oh,
was the pesticides being sprayed on plants, killing all the birds, causing, yeah,
hmm.
these all had impacts on our lives at one way or another.
Yeah. So it sounds like that really honed and developed in you this connection to the land, to the water, appreciation for it, which seems like it just paved the path for you to be in food related business.
Absolutely. I mean, hydroponics is something I truly care about. I do think that we need to preserve our water supply. I think that we need to be cognizant of what we're putting and feeding to these plants in indoor facilities, and making sure that we're picking the right path forward for future generations as well. I mean, nobody wants glyphosate on everything. I understand there's a time and a place, but please.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there seems to be more of awareness too. And even people thinking about the experiences they have when they go to places like Italy and they have as much peaches as they can, or France and eat as many croissants, which I've done both of, and it doesn't have the effect of like the wheat that we eat here. And I've been dabbling in some sourdough making as well recently, so I'm looking for those heritage blends, and I found a company based in Minnesota actually that is had to go back to like square one and made these heirloom seeds, and now they're going heirloom. And the founder had some celiac issues, and he's with this new flower and this new blend that he created. He's not having the problem. So kind of speaks a little bit to what
All
we're putting in the ground.
volumes. And I was an early proponent of I understand celiacs, I understand people with sensitivities to that, but it's glyphosate in my personal opinion, and I am by no means a doctor.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So in your time with Hydrofarm, what do you think was the biggest takeaway for you with that experience that you had there? What were some learnings?
Absolutely. I mean, I was incredibly fortunate. I started there in 2010. I got to learn from the inside all the way out. Started in Southern Florida, worked my way up to larger territories, turned territories around, got new territories. I have to say, Peter Wardenberg is a absolute wonderful, wonderful man and somebody I will respect for the rest of my life. He did more for that organization and all the leaders to come, but Peter is somebody that I'll always respect. And he kind of gave me the ability to continue to grow in my role, pushed me, expected higher expectations, which I always tried to rise above and was very fortunate. Hydrofarm had a bunch of acquisitions. I was able to be on the acquisition teams for a few of these projects. Before Hydrofarm, I did also receive an MBA. So that I also felt like was fortunate. It was in marketing and entrepreneurship. And I think we're all entrepreneurs one way or another. And, when I was starting out, it was B2B brick and mortar hydroponic retail sales. So really, I don't want to ever think of I was one of those kids that knew they wanted to be a sales rep. My family had a motorcycle dealership growing up, and it was always the coolest when one of the reps was coming to town. You always got to go for a dinner. You got to see the latest and greatest. So, whenever Honda was coming to town, whatever I was doing, if my best friend was like, "Hey, let's go." Nope, Honda rep's coming. I got to go to dinner with my dad. We're gonna sit. And he'd always show up in either, if it was summertime, he'd show up in a new Honda truck with a dirt bike in the back or ride his Goldwing. Or it was just one of those, like, even at, 20 years old, I was like, this
Yeah.
is it. This is the coolest opportunity. Burned out on power sports industry and, found my way into the hydroponic sector and kind of got to do that. I got to be the guy that went from state to state and showed up and hopefully made some positive impacts. I believe I did. And there are quite a few clients I'm still in touch with to this day that are personal friends. And, their kids are, now 15 years older. And
Wow.
it's cool to actually be able to connect with some of these people and continue our conversations like nothing's ever changed. So I've been very fortunate.
That's great. The great story too. And there is something about sales roles. There's a fine line sometimes because you get to that sleazy salesperson, the used car salesperson, but the other one who understands the importance of building relationships and building networks and long-term partnerships. And I think when they're done well, and it's something I've had to learn as an entrepreneur when I moved from I was in corporate 20 plus years, got shown the door, and then I had to figure out entrepreneurship, and which they don't teach you. So you gotta pay for coaches and figure out like websites and landing pages and email lists and all the things that like you don't have a need for. But then sales is one of those skills, like, and when people do it and they do it well, they really shine and they really stand out. And like that's probably what attracted you to this guy.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, I'm one of those fortunate. I got to go to Honda and Yamaha sales school all growing up. I mean, highlight of my getting to sit and listen to somebody lecture and hype you for a sales was I'm a diehard Notre Dame fan. And Yamaha brought Lou Holtz in, and I want to say like 99. And I got to watch Lou Holtz get up on stage and get a room full of dealers excited to go sell motorcycles. I could have torn a table in half. I was so pumped and excited to see my one of my all-time coaching heroes up on stage, yelling at us. And I was like, "This is the best ever."
That's so great. So then let's pivot to Red. How did that come about?
Well, 15 years is long anywhere, and
Yeah.
I really wanted to focus on what truly makes me happy. And I was thinking, is it substrate? Is it nutrients? Is it what aspect of our industry do I want to jump to a different industry? And a dear family friend and I were talking, and very successful businessman, but doesn't know our industry too well. He's like, "What aspect makes you the happiest?" I said, "Lighting." He goes, "Well, I don't know your industry, but are there just lighting companies you can go work for?" Sometimes the simplest and most obvious answer is it. And I started doing some research, started looking at companies, and I wanted to find somebody that was not necessarily in the US. And Red and I kind of found each other. They had been searching LinkedIn, and one of the founders came across my profile right about the time I had come across their website. And it was almost too perfect not to work. We talked, we had more similarities than we realized in common, and it just felt like the logical next progression for my career. Dynamic lighting was something that I was vaguely familiar with. I knew there were a lot of changes in LEDs, and the one thing I knew I didn't want to do is just be a box pusher. I wanted to believe in the product, I wanted to understand the product, and I wanted to find solutions for people growing crops that hadn't been presented to them. That's where I think the value lies. If you have something that's unique and different, that's going to make their day easier, make their crop healthier, allow them more return on their investment, for me, that's a win. That checks all the boxes I was looking for.
So I'm curious, what was the learning curve like? Because coming out of like hydroponics and then moving into LEDs, and it feels like it gets more technical
It
once you get,
does.
yeah.
I will say I was fortunate at Hydrofarm. I got to be quite involved in our lighting solutions. I had been selling multiple LEDs brands and house brands and others for quite some time. That being said, I absolutely was impressed once I kind of sat down and went through Red's offering. It's a four-channel dynamic lighting solution that just literally endless potentials for endless crop varietals. It really intrigued me on how they're able to manage energy, as well as the United States does not have some of the same constraints that they face in Europe with kilowatts per hour, surges in pricing and spikes. So we're quite fortunate here. But that's one of the features that Red has is it can monitor and manage energy costs based on kilowatt per hour. So, if there's going to be a spike increase, we could actually adjust the spectral parameters and make sure that the red light is still focusing, which is the most usable in photosynthesis for the plants. So, we could actually turn channels off and allow for light to still be used at a lower electrical cost.
Okay. So for the listeners who are not familiar with Red and the history, can you kind of give a bit a synopsis of that?
So, Red is an 8-year-old company. It was started by two gentlemen, Luis and Yassine. They have founded this through their grad school work. They are both engineers, electrical and mechanical, and then they have their third friend who is a computer engineer. All three of them pretty much founded this company together. They've been building it brick by brick. They've got about 10 million square foot under management in Europe. Quite impressive. Some of the world's largest young plant producers, some of the largest greenhouses are also using them. Really, they look for the right customer that's open to new technology, that's willing to listen and learn with us. It's very unique and it is very efficient and effective. And we're just fortunate for every client we have and every client to come. I mean, really is a dream come true getting to work here.
So imagine for farms, it's a lot of it is dependent on what they're growing, how big they want to grow, what they currently have in terms of a tech stack,
Absolutely.
energy considerations, location. So when you think about the current clients with Red, are there consistent patterns with people for whom like the tech stack is a good fit?
Certainly, and I would say right now our 85% of our business is done in high wire crop production. Cucumbers is an absolutely fantastic example
Mm,
of something we do exceptionally well,
okay.
as well as tomato production. I mean, tomatoes, the standard recipe of 5590 is what almost everyone pushes. We've actually been able to increase yield bricks and reduce energy consumption using our own proprietary recipes that you get access to on day one of deployment. That's one of the other really cool things. Working for a French company, slightly different than US. And I don't like using the term siloed, but responsibility chain. So when you use Red, I'm your salesperson, but we have an IT department that's going to work with you. We use a proprietary wire mesh network. So all of our fixtures can communicate. 3,000 fixtures can all make an adjustment within 10 seconds. It's unbelievable. We also have an agronomic team that's dedicated to crop support, regardless of your crop. They actually have an R&D facility in Nantes, France, where they do trials on multiple varietals and they change it sporadically or as clients requested, hey, I think I'm going to do lavender what are you seeing here? And that was something we were able to do. Cucumbers, strawberries, they have a strawberry chamber where they're actually doing work and have been doing work for almost 8 years on strawberries, tomatoes, cucumbers. The one thing I did learn recently, and you never ask a question you don't know the answer to, but we're not lawyers. I'm surprised at the amount of greenhouses I've toured recently that are pepper producers that are not using supplemental lighting. That was one for me that I just kind of went, oh, that's interesting. And I still haven't found it out. So if anyone wants to comment why and you could educate me, I'd greatly appreciate it.
Yeah. So when you think about who is a good fit for red, and you think about prep work or things companies should be considering before, maybe even before having a conversation, or even considering like a revamp of their LEDs or an installation of their LEDs, what are some of those things they should be thinking of early on in this conversation?
Great question. I think they need to be ready to listen. And I think, when someone comes with something new, it's hard to listen, especially when it's a shock to everybody's system. I think there are some ideas around running high PPFD. Why would dynamic change anything? Like, I'm already running a high PPFD, I have single endeds, I'm putting photons on plant. Why do I need to do it? Well, high PPFD alone doesn't necessarily create a balance. If your night temperatures are high, your respiration offsets gains. Are you adjusting your calcium for your fruit quality? It's dynamic steering. And, we need to understand the totality of the house, the structure, the room that we're working in, because a spectrum shift is phenomenal, but we also need to work in conjunction with your irrigation, with your nutrition. It's not just photon count. You're synchronizing psychology, and it all has to come together to work together. We want the whole process to come together for you to be successful. And that's why you have access to the agro teams, Raphael, and the whole organization. And, these guys are all over Europe all the time, guys and gals. They'll jump on planes at a moment notice just to fly out to, Spain, Germany, Portugal. Hey, we've got, some new Eastern European countries we're targeting everywhere. And, if our agronomists need to fly out there to take a look and make sure that everything's dialed in properly, they're willing to do that. No real additional cost to the customers because customer success is paramount.
That's great to hear. How would you differentiate the thought process for a farm that is doing a brand new installation or maybe getting a new glass house up and running or a new vertical farm up and running versus someone whose maybe current LED system is a bit long in the tooth, and so they're starting to think about like maybe we need an upgrade and should we look at red?
Absolutely, and a couple things immediately jump to mind, and I feel like a realtor right now, but location, location, location. It's going to be obviously dependent upon rebates available. And, one of the things in certain instances this does come up, are you current with your electrical provider? These simple little things, because if you're not current, it's not going to get you out of the hole. You need to be current for rebates. Once you're current, and with some of our solutions in certain states, you actually get monthly rebates as well due to our lack of pull on the grid where we can do certain things. Also, cogeneration is a great solution as well. But, it really comes down to, is this the right fit for your farm, your staff, your crop? And only the owners or the day-to-day managers could answer that honestly. I think everybody wants the newest, latest, greatest Ferrari, but if you haven't driven in 15 years, let's take it a little slow.
Can you dive into the rebates a little bit? Because I think maybe folks that are just getting started, they don't understand. Is it a state by state issue? Is it a
Oh, it is
countrywide?
way more complicated
Yeah,
than that. Find a good rebate company. I mean, I have my preferred, but they're all third party. They're all fiduciary responsible to work on behalf of the consumer, the person purchasing it.
yeah,
So that I think is wonderful. And it really matters within each state because, there are a multitude of electrical providers in each state. So, just because you're in Columbus, Ohio, and your next farm could be, down in Zanesville, you could have two different electrical providers, which would be two different rebate calculations. That being said, knowing your rebate, rebates don't necessarily make it free. Rebates alleviate the cost. So you still may have to lay out cash at the beginning and you will recoup, state by state, provider by provider, 50, 60, 80, 100. We have seen north of 100, and where that gets very interesting. And, one of the things that you have to talk about is look at you're tearing something down and putting something up. There's a labor cost associated with that. Your facility is going to be down for a minimum of 2 to 3 days. Let's not deny the undeniable. So there are costs associated with that, and certain states allow you to account for that, which I think is incredible. And in certain markets, we've had that pleasure. We're getting ready to deploy about 660 fixtures into Illinois, and it's absolutely working out wonderfully for the garden, for the facility that's going to be taking it. The problem is it's every week is a harvest, so it's going to take 10 rooms, 10 weeks, and they are going to be out of pocket cash for 10 weeks, and then they'll get paid back in full, but they'll get some of the labor costs back. So the lights basically come in free, labor gets mitigated, and they will have a state of the art facility where they'll be able to adjust spectrum from propagation all the way through harvest, final harvest. And I think that's one of the other big points too is when you're doing these complete overhauls, you've got to look at the facility in total. Don't just say, "Hey, I'm going to do Flower Bay 3," and expect that, everything you're doing and, from prop to veg into flower, there are going to be some differences and some nuances and some adjustments. The levers you'll have to pull.
And at a high level, just like if someone was looking at the concept of rebates, who's not familiar with the industry and how things work, is it essentially just the state compensating or reimbursing the farm based on what they're spending in electrical output, or how what at a high level? We don't have to get too
At the
much into the
highest level,
yeah.
it's not even state, it's the actual electrical provider because 'cause they're usually private companies
Oh,
or
okay.
co-ops, and yeah, they're basically gonna say, "You've got X number of fixtures pulling X number of watts or amperage. This should be what your electrical drain on the grid is." Well, if you go to a higher efficiency fixture, which would be less pull on the actual system,
Okay.
makes life a lot easier for them. It's
Yeah.
very interesting. And the easiest way it was explained to me, the very first electrical grid in the United States is in Atlantic City, New Jersey. Thomas Edison did it down there, and that is the oldest grid in America. The rebates in southern New Jersey are quite nice
Yeah.
because it's cheaper to give rebates than to build a new grid.
How has LED technology evolved? Because I started the podcast in 2020 and I was learning a lot about the industry and LED technology specifically. It must keep evolving quickly with like innovations, and I'm curious what you've seen in your time there.
I've been fortunate. I've seen LEDs progress from very early cobs, the blurple light that we all talked about an eon ago, to phosphor coating, to lens versus non-lens, different types of lens optics, optic versus non-optic, to where we sit today with dynamic lighting. And there are plenty of people doing wonderful dynamic lighting solutions. I think there's enough space for all of us. It's, some people like pepperoni, some people like sausage, some people want cauliflower pizza. That's cool. I support all pizza. How it works with LEDs, but they're ever evolving. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think there'd ever be a point. I mean, we just brought out new fixtures. We're
Okay.
bringing out new technology all the time. We're upgrading what we currently have. One of the very important things for North America is DLC, Design Light Consortium. Spectacular group, Glaze Institute, everybody. It's a bunch of very academically oriented, very precise, very third party. I respect them immensely. And to be eligible for rebates, you have to have DLC. There's some other parameters, 5-year warranty, certain level of efficacy to be, able to play in the games. And, in different parts of the world, they have their own set standards. That just happens to be North America. And I happen to be the North American biz dev guy. So for me, that's paramount. And we did just get our newest and latest, greatest DLC listings. It went exceptionally well. It's a multi-bar fixture for our indoor. Wonderful for anybody doing indoor propagation or cultivation. It's 3.15 efficacy. I mean, it's a phenomenal fixture
Mm.
called the Draco. We have under canopy lighting. We're at, 3.6. I mean, it's spectacular. And doing all of this technology and all these upgrades pushed other areas, and we have other technology in Europe that we're going to be getting DLC'd. It's a process. You have to submit it. It goes into a goniosphere. They do all types of lab tests to hook it up to electronics to make sure that your claims are accurate.
Okay.
We're confident they are, and sometimes they even come out better based on how they test it. That's a win. And so once we get all those, we'll be bringing that technology over. The new technology from Red, and I don't want to get too deep into it, but we can throw square footprints. I don't know anybody else that can say that. Cover a 4x8 area with a square perfectly. How many of you have 4x8 tables in your facilities? It kind of makes sense.
Yeah. That's kind of thinking ahead there. Is there a nice win you had recently with a client without obviously getting into specifics if you're not able to share, but I'm sure can you think of someone
So
who
I
had
did
one?
just get to come. So I had a wonderful week last week, and it's more of a team win. I was not on board. I started with Red in August. The deal was pretty much finalized by the time I got on, but we got to go up to British Columbia, Vancouver area and tour a very large strawberry greenhouse. And we literally left Indoor AgCon on Thursday at like 9 o'clock. We flew out of Vegas, landed at midnight, and 9 a.m. we were in the car on our way to a strawberry facility and got to walk about. It was an 8-hectare facility. I'd say three ish are strawberry, the rest are cucumbers, but absolutely beautiful. Really, really impressive work that those guys are doing. I'm sure there'll be a press release coming out soon, and I'll make sure I tag you in it. It's very exciting and really has gotten me excited more so about strawberries. I've had a few other wins as well in Michigan. We have some early adapters, phenomenal group there. It's an MSO that is continuing to grow, continuing to expand, and they're deploying us into the Michigan market, the Minnesota market, and then another market that they'll be entering very shortly. So really wonderful there. It's people buy from people, and 15
Yeah.
plus years of relationships and doing the right thing and being honest pays off. I mean, the good guys and gals do win, and we
Yeah.
just need to stay the course.
That is nice to hear. What else was a takeaway for you overall? We talked about, reducing the hype at Indoor AgCon, but every time I go, it's nice. I've been going probably now for
You're a bit of a
3 or 4
celebrity
years.
too, so everybody kind of gravitates, and I was thrilled with the time we got, and
Yeah.
it was just awesome watching you work.
Thank you.
But no, I would say I think it was refreshing for people to truly talk about plants again, not the next
Yeah.
PE round, next
Yeah.
VC, who's coming in. There was no doom and gloom. Nobody really went out of. There are a lot of these facilities that are no more, but it wasn't the week before again where everybody's showing up and it's all condolences. Sorry. Which, in years past, we've all had to do that. Like,
Of course.
oh, wow,
Yeah.
that just came out.
Yeah. Where's that guy? Oh, he's not gonna be attending this year because
Or he is hat in hand, which is even worse.
Yeah, for sure. So I like to ask this question. It's a bit of kinda helps you think a little bit about what's on your plate recently and what you're working on, but what is a tough question you've had to ask yourself recently?
Time management. It's hard. And I think I already said it, ADHD. I mean, time management for me is
Yeah.
difficult, but I'm also fortunate. I'm also part of a very small piece of a new architecture group and very excited to be doing some things there. Red is 100% my focus.
Yeah.
But, whether it's an architecture project, finding new leads there, whether it's, I do have a passion project I'm involved in that is for the pharmaceutical industry, which has to do with people with disabilities being able to be self reliant,
Oh, wow.
being able to take their own medicine. That torquing motion on a pill bottle is actually very difficult if you're arthritic or
Yeah.
gosh forbid you're an amputee, you're now relying on either using your chin or finding another mechanism to be able to take the meds throughout the course of the day. I can't, I'm not, this isn't even a plug, but it's a one-handed enclosure that you can open and get your meds out and be self-sufficient.
That's great.
It's one of those projects that once it came across my desk, it was too good not to be part of something making a positive impact. And
Yeah.
it doesn't always have to be what you do; it's what you care about too, which I think is important.
That seems to be a underlying thread that I get from you in our time together and our conversation together and the stories you shared and what you shared about the past and how I saw you working the floors at Indoor AgCon. Where does that come from?
I know the answer. It's almost embarrassing to say it out loud, though. Being told you couldn't do something as a child. "Oh, you're not gonna be able to do that," or "That's outside." I went to a private school growing up.
Yeah,
Dyslexia was difficult on me, and my school's requirement was to graduate 8th grade, you had to take 3 years of Latin. I was exempt from that because I was dyslexic, and I actually thought that was unfair. I wanted to take Latin. I wound up taking 8 years of Latin. Now, I'm not gonna say I was an A student. I wasn't a B student. I was like a C minus student. But you know what? Dogged determination. I
yeah,
think that pays, and I think it also helped me just realize, look, if you work hard, you put the time in, you learn, you really can achieve, and I think my parents' work ethic, but, being told you can't do something is usually the greatest motivator for most people.
for sure. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate that kind of peek into what makes you tick. And it sounds like, everything that you've done from your early interest in hydro farms, the connections you've made, the mentors you've had. You mentioned a couple of people that have been instrumental in
Mhm.
there. And it's so fascinating. Sometimes it's hard to measure our progress when we look back to yesterday or the week before, but sometimes we do have to look back at the 5 year, the 10 years, like, oh, yeah, like I have grown. And oh, yeah, I did develop some new skills. And
Also, shout out to my wife. She has been an incredibly supportive
great.
human, and, yeah, the reason I get out of bed every single day is for my six-year-old son that I would move heaven and earth for, and I think that also is pretty damn important in my
That's very
life.
important. Well, yeah, I appreciate you sharing it. I'm really grateful that we've been able to connect and then you had some time to come on here and share the story and share the success you've been having with Red. I think it's, we talk a lot about all the different technologies and a lot of times it's helpful to have the backstory about, not just like pick this one tech and it'll make your farm that much better. But you mentioned the sales piece too. So it's almost like, hey, you're looking to the sense that I get is with the work you're doing for Red, you're helping to build relationships,
That's it.
long-term partnerships. And I
People
think
buy
that's really
from people.
important. Yeah. Yeah. People buy from people. Well, anything else that you're thinking about in terms of the future for Red or for the LED space that has you excited?
Oof, a lot. I want to be able to help bring more crops to people in food deserts. Glenn's pretty big on that. I think that container farming is going to become a significantly larger role in the US. The whole grow local, eat local movement's wonderful, but know your farmer, know your butcher. Go plant some seeds in your own backyard. I mean, with everything going on today, I'm not a crazy person, but having some vacuum packed seal seeds is not a bad thing. Go buy, non-GMO organic seeds that you can just have at a moment's notice. Yeah, it's gonna take some time, but owning seeds makes me feel warm and fuzzy.
That's great advice. Yeah, we're dabbling a little bit in that. We've got chickens now and we're doing some planting. We just had a nice harvest of garlic.
That's awesome.
So it's a little bit helps, and for this city boy, grew up just outside New York and lived in New York City and lived in LA, it was a bit of a shift, but I've come to appreciate the ethic, and not that we have a farm, but people who grew up on a farm, and I've noticed it, like, it's to a person, there's just a built-in work ethic about we just
We had
gotta get up, gotta get the work done.
8 sheep growing up, ducks, dogs, cats, all types of critters, and yeah, it's one of those you gotta go clean the stalls and throw the hay and make sure the alfalfa. Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those, you kind of forget what you have done, and I think
Yeah,
you kind of nailed that. Yeah.
yeah. Well, thanks again, Andrew, for your time. I really enjoyed this conversation. I'm looking forward to building our relationship and our
Absolutely,
partnerships
Harry.
and appreciate everything you're doing, not only for, the CEA space, but just everything you're doing on a personal front. It seems like your heart's in the right place. Appreciate our friendship and
Yep.
building this relationship we
Look
got.
forward to many more. Thank you,
Yeah.
sir. Look forward to coming back.
So the website is horticulture.red. Anywhere else you want to send folks?
Horticulture.red is number one. And then if you are looking for any architecture, 2WR. And keep an eye out for Snap Slide. Hopefully, we'll be at a pharmacy near you soon. It's in its infancy, but we're doing everything we can. Check them out on LinkedIn. It'll definitely bring a smile to your face.
Okay. Make sure, give me those links and we'll make sure everything's in the show notes as well. I appreciate you, the time together.
Thank you, guys. Thank you all. Bye.